it's been over 200 years since the gold was discovered here.
It was against the law at that time to be Indian.
We're liable to destroy our own rivers and meadows. The same man that put us on reserves and ghettos. The same man that's on those dirty dollar bills that you praise. The same white collar ballers that be treating you like slaves.
Oh, Great Spirit, grandfather, grandmother, thank you for this beautiful red day you've given us, and thank you for our lives.
Petu te yetu washte mitakwiapi. Good evening, relatives, and welcome to Bay Native Circle here on KPFA and online at kpfa.org. This is Tony Gonzales, your host tonight, February 5, 2025. And this evening, my relatives, I've invited Shannon Rivers to talk to us about the current Trump administration and their appointment of Doug Burgum, former governor of North Dakota, to the position of Secretary of the Department of Interior, and what effect that will have on Indian country, my relatives. So tune in on that. And also, before we go too far, I just want to say a big congratulations, a big salute to the freedom clemency for Leonard Peltier, my relatives, as we all rejoice on having heard that President Joe Biden, on one of his last acts before leaving office, provided clemency for political prisoner Leonard Peltier. And he'll be going home February 18 from the Coleman Penitentiary out there in Orlando, Florida area. And he'll be going to Turtle Mountain Reservation in North Dakota. And his family will be waiting for him, friends and allies. And indeed, it'll be a big day come February 27th for the annual Wounded Knee anniversary there on Pine Ridge Reservation, my relatives. This will be the 52nd anniversary, and Leonard Peltier, very much a part of the American Indian movement. I'm sure he will be celebrated, and people have much to celebrate and talk about. So keep that in mind for February 27th at Wounded Knee, Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota, my relatives. All right, let's go into that interview with Shannon Rivers. Oh, all my relations on the line. I've invited Shannon Rivers to talk to us. And Shannon Rivers has been on our radio program several times in the past, my relatives, primarily on incarceration of indigenous peoples and issues like that, and what's going on his reservation. And Shannon, the Pima Nation. Well, Shannon, if you can introduce yourself, but I would also like to talk to you about the current Trump administration and about the new Department of Interior, Doug Burgum, and also the ICE raids that are going on in Indian country. Shannon, so if you can introduce yourself, much appreciated.
Good, Tash. Thank you, Tony. Good day, everybody. Anya Chugig, Shannon Rivers, Akamir Autumn. I'm from the Gila River Indian community in Arizona, but currently reside on Tongva territory in Los Angeles. So it's good to hear from you, Tony.
Oh, and Shannon, out in Indian country and all across, like the Navajo Nation has put a policy now for people to have their IDs when they on and off the reservation, and South Dakota is now issuing free IDs to all their tribal members as well. They're feeling the impact of the patrol by ICE or the immigration patrol. Can you shed some light on some of these activities and and what impact that's having on Indian country, please.
Sure. Just a couple of things, Tony. From the Arizona perspective, I think from Gila River perspective, we just in Arizona alone, we have 22 federally recognized tribes throughout our state. And so the first concern that I think came from the Navajo Nation, then from the White Mountain Apache, and these individuals who were stopped by the ICE enforcement teams were in border towns or city areas like Phoenix and Flagstaff. And so they were questioned on their citizenship. They're Native Americans, they're Navajo and Apache citizens from White Mountain and from Navajo Nation. So that concern that immediately went up because we do have in Phoenix alone, we do have quite a number, a good-sized number of homeless Native American citizens. And so what we're seeing then is these raids that are happening are not just targeting, our Mexican American brothers and sisters, but it's bleeding over into the Native American population, and it's concerning some of our tribal members and our tribal leadership. So what the tribes have done, and you can kind of follow it online, but a lot of our tribal leaders then put out statements and kind of been proactive in initiating a new tribal ID. Really, it's just basically it's if I carry an old one, I'll go get a new one. It's the same ID, but it looks newer, right? And so if I look at my tribal ID, and I'm reading off the back of it for the audience here, it reads that it is hereby certified that the individual whose photograph and signature appear on the reverse hereof is an enrolled member of the Gila River Indian community, a federally recognized tribal government, which has authority, which has authorized the insurance of this tribal identification card. And it's the enrollment department at Gila River. And so I think what's happening is there's some concern then because this new administration is questioning birthright citizenship. It's challenging, or I don't know what it's going to do. This administration is schizophrenic, no? And so it's challenging constitutional rights, the 1924 Citizenship Act. It's questioning a lot of things, right? And it goes back to, the 1884 case of Elk versus Wilkins, and the legal analogy on Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship. Are Native Americans citizens of the United States? So it begs to, there's a lot of questions that aren't answered by this administration. And it seems that we're going to be getting the short end of the stick when we're dealing with this administration.
And, coupled with that, what can you tell us about how Indian country pretty much is feeling, because you travel all throughout the Southwest as well, and including California in particular in recent times. But what can you tell us about the new appointed Department of Interior, Doug Burgum, who has replaced Deb Haaland? Please.
I think when you look at the relationship with the former governor of North Dakota, Doug Burgum, he was pretty friendly with the 5 federally recognized tribes in North Dakota, but he stepped in during the Dakota Access Pipeline protest, and he had at that time he had tons and tons of meetings with the tribal leadership there. He was trying to deal with some of the situations that were going on within Indian country in that particular area in North Dakota and the Dakota Access Pipeline. But, if you look at Deb Haaland, all her work from the boarding school abuse healing initiative to protecting over 674 million acres of Indian country, from mining and fracking and extractive industries and offshore drilling. Now, this administration, my concern is that, this new Interior Secretary, if he gets confirmed, and I don't know, I think his confirmation is tomorrow. I'm not sure, or did it already happen? But my concern is he's going to be a puppet to Trump's administration and his conversation and his thoughts about drill, baby, drill. It is concerning because you have, but Doug did say that in his interior address that he's going to make tribes his top priority. But the reality is that we have over 400 million acres in Indian country that are susceptible to this mining, this fracking, and extractive industry. They're looking at building this kind of energy economy and expanding on it within the United States. And where does it put Native people? Where does it put us in the ideas of our own sacred sites? How do we protect them against somebody like a Trump who barely recognizes Native people? Again, this administration is all over the place. One minute he's giving federal recognition to our relatives in the North. In the next minute, he's talking about drill, baby, drill, and that, we're looking at, the 570 plus federally recognized tribes in the country that their lands, their trust, public lands and trust responsibilities of the federal government can change dramatically. And so we're worried about, I would be definitely worried about that. And before we move on, Tony, I just want to make sure that we also talk about our federal funding for our men and women who are incarcerated in private and federal institutions. But to the point of, we're facing some domestic energy dilemmas and concerns that I think Indian countries should be very aware of. However, we also need to recognize that these tribes, like the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara in North Dakota, all the tribes are they recognize their sovereign status. But like the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara, they are an extractive tribe. They allow fracking and they allow drilling in their territory. I don't agree with that, but that's their sovereign right. So to lump all Native Americans into this category is kind of, we shouldn't do that, right? Some tribes may agree with this energy plan to drill, baby drill, whatever that looks like. But there are other tribes, and many of them will say, we have some serious concerns over what drill, baby drill looks like, and especially when it impacts our watersheds, our territories, our sacred sites. Look what Trump did when he came into office. He started renaming mountains and challenging Native people and changing the names of the landscapes because of his sometimes very hostile relationship toward Native people. So.
Right. Yes, indeed. And yes, I would like to talk to you about the federal funding and the attempt on those cuts, although it seems like it was rescinded, along with some of the others of the 200 executive orders that President Trump has put out. And back to Doug Burgum, there formerly governor of North Dakota, and there's 5 federally recognized tribes there. Shannon. That's 5% of the population, from what I understand, and that he got along pretty good with the tribes. I don't know if those tribes were oil industry type people as well, but and just to remind people, one of his biggest obstacles to him when he came on board was, as you said, the DAPL, the Dakota Access Pipeline, and how we learned and saw on Facebook and during that period, 2016, 2017, and into 18, National Guards were deployed. Many people were arrested, many were hurt. And that pipeline, 1,172 mile long underground pipeline, transporting crude oil from North Dakota into Illinois. So that was one of his big obstacles, and also in violation of the Fort Laramie Treaty. So, and now fast forward with his nomination assured as a businessman, oil man, he's going to pursue that baby drill, but he's not only involved caretaker now for all those millions of acres that we're talking about, and resources, cultural resources as well, but he's also in charge of the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Bureau of Land Management. What can you tell us about that? Because the education of Indian people is also under that sphere of influence.
So yeah, and I just want to go back to the tribes in North Dakota. If we look at, and I don't want to pick on them, but when I talk about North Dakota's Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara, they were churning out the Fort Berthold Reservation behind Texas and behind New Mexico. North Dakota is the third largest producing oil state in the country, and with Fort Berthold, almost 1 million acres there was putting out 300,000 barrels a day, which generated some serious income for that tribe. And yes, I mean, when we look at what happened in North Dakota, the human rights violations, the assaults by the sometimes private security, and the North Dakota Police Department and state police department, those were human rights violations and assaults on citizens of these nations and tribes. And we didn't just have people from North Dakota, as you recall. We had people from all over the world and all over the country participating in that mass action to stop Dakota Access Pipeline. And so yes, and unfortunately, he's taking over the Department of Interior and all the agencies that lie under the Department of Interior. And what does that mean then for Indian country? No one really knows at this moment. Some people do support him, and they if you look at that President, Navajo Nation President Ngrin, I forget his name. I don't know how to say his name, but he's the president of Navajo Nation. Said that he shared his congratulations and his optimism for this new Interior Secretary. So again, tribes can decide what they want, but I'm concerned that we're not moving toward a more sustainable development in this country. We're reversing it back to this massive extractive industry that has destroyed many of our lands and our territories. If you look at Gila River alone, we have no water in our territory. The Gila River does not run anymore. It is there, but it does not run. The water is dammed up further north of us. So, and we know that the devastating impacts that has historically played against the health and the well-being and our livelihoods of the O'odham people along the Gila River. So, but yeah, and again, there's a lot to be concerned about, with especially in the Four Corners area, the uranium mining. Navajo land is rich with oil and natural gas, and it should stay in the ground. But again, who knows? So, and the other question, Tony, you had?
Oh, I'm trying to get an overall picture, for our listeners, from your point of view, with this new coming, the administration and with the Department of Interior in particular, and their motto, dig baby dig, it is going to expand even up to Alaska and perhaps open up the ANWR region that is now threatened as we speak. And you mentioned the Navajo Nation and the efforts there that were underway not too long ago. Transporting uranium across Navajo land. I thought that the chairman of the tribe had put a halt on that, but
I think he did. Yeah, and I don't know, again, if you're supporting this administration as a president and a leader of a tribe, you have to weigh the impacts that it'll have on your citizens, whether it's hauling uranium or whether it's drilling to find this gas and this oil in Navajo Nation. I can't speak for them, but if we look at kind of us as a society within this country, as citizens of this great land of ours, this 570 plus recognized tribes, and those that are not recognized, and all the indigenous peoples that come here from Central and South America, we all want to live in a better place and environment, but at what cost do we do that at? And President Trump is a businessman. He's, to me, morally, he does not fit the moral compass of indigenous people's thoughts and processes. Our pedagogy is different. Our ideologies are different. Our traditions are different. I'm a citizen of the Gila River Indian community. I am Akamir O'odham before anything else. And I want our listeners to understand that I am not going to blend into the society that forces me to think differently and to try to become this typical American that is based on greed and settler colonialism and extractive industry. We can't do that. And honestly, that has, because of settler colonialism, it has displaced us, it has disheartened us, it has violated us, it has killed us, it has murdered us, it has taken our lands, our resources, and our territories, put us on reservations. This country has not been, it goes without saying, this country has not been, this settler colonial society, this American society has not been our friend to the native people of the indigenous peoples of these territories. So I wonder what some of our tribal leaders are thinking.
And no doubt, as you say, the settler colonialism, and it seems like we're going to come head on with that altogether. Whether people have understood it or not, it's going to be out in plain view. I see in the days in the next 4 years, perhaps ahead. And mentioning the changing of sacred sites like the mountains, as you mentioned, that was from, for example, Mount Delaney to
Mount Delaney, yeah.
to Mount McKinley, and I imagine they might even try to reverse some of the forts that were changed names that had Confederate names. They might go after that, and there's a big change altogether. That's happening, and with all that digging that's going on too, whether in northern area, North Dakota, or in the Southwest, it all takes a lot of water. As you say, the Gila River is no longer running like it used to, and water rights for Indian people and not being allowed at the table to talk frankly. We're headed into some tough climate, and we'll face it all together, and in prayer and solidarity, gathering alliances. What can you tell us about your end and the scope of work that you're involved in now with incarcerated people, and how are you feeling edgy about what may transpire?
Well, I when I think about our incarcerated brothers and sisters, I just want to go back really quick, to Denali, to Mount McKinley. If you that's an insult to the indigenous peoples of those territories, right? And in Alaska, and so again, he doesn't care about Native people. But going to our incarcerated brothers and sisters, if there's an attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and services for our brothers and sisters who are incarcerated, sweat lodges, things that are alternative, will they be impacted by federal funding? So will Native American spiritual leaders be excluded from what is typically a Western kind of Christian ideology in this country that is dominant in this country? And you can feel that domination within our institutions, whether it's state or federal or private, that when a Native American spiritual leader like myself walks in with his drum or his pipe or his buffalo skull or rattle or gourds or whatever I'm walking in with, it is seen more as performative. Will the federal funds be dried up for those services that are that can be used for our brothers and sisters who are in federal institutions and or private institutions? Because they don't particularly care that Native people get services as long as it's Christian-based services. And so I worry about that too. I wonder. I don't know. I mean, I'm just throwing it out. Yes. Could be because these things can be impacted, and so then it prevents someone like me or many of the other brothers and sisters who go into the federal institutions to be halted and say, well, we're not providing those services anymore. And so that's a question that I have. That we must be on the lookout to what that means for our brothers and sisters inside. And the last thing that I'll say is that when we look at Native people and we're asked to carry our for ICE, for the Immigration and Custom Enforcement agencies, we're asked to carry our certificate of Indian blood, our CIB cards, right? But if I'm homeless and I'm Navajo or I'm Apache or I'm O'odham or whatever I am, Paiute or wherever I come from, but I'm homeless and I've been living on the street and I haven't been back to my tribe, or I haven't have access to the resources that my tribe provides, but I've been homeless, whether it's Los Angeles, Seattle, wherever I'm at, or Phoenix, and I don't have an ID, then where are you going to send me? What are you going to do with me? Am I going to get caught up in this melee of being sent to Guantanamo Bay, or God knows, right? So I worry about our tribal members and folks that are not only in our prisons, but those that are houseless and homeless in this country. So yeah, there's a lot to think about. So.
No, so true, and how you bring it forward of Native American people who are houseless, homeless, and in the streets in cities, If you're brown, you're a suspect, and
Yep.
and indeed, if I may go even further with that idea, Shannon, all the brown people that we're talking about in this case here, those that are being rounded up, those that are being threatened by ICE, these are all indigenous peoples of the Americas. So in a sense, we're regionally, we're witnessing the largest mass indigenous relocation, if you will, of
Yep.
indigenous peoples, and how we stand up to that is how united we are, and alliance building coalition will be ever more important. This administration is not giving warning other than their 2025 proposal that they're going through, and it doesn't really call for consultations of any sorts, and even with Indian people. So we're going to have to gum it up in the courts in the meantime while we gather our forces. The government, current government's even thinking of getting rid of the Antiquities Act, 1906, that of protecting sacred sites. I understand that Oak Flat may be one of the first that might go, in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
please. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I always think about our brothers and sisters, the Apaches, the San Carlos Apaches, and Windsor Nosy, and his fight to save Oak Flat. Oak Flat is critical. It's just not the Apache. It is indicative to how Native people relate to the land and to the territory. But it also puts into question the abuse that has happened to Native people with regards to their spiritual relationship to the land and to these sacred sites. And so if we remove the Antiquities Act, that was what, in 1906. I mean, if we don't recognize these spaces, that can fall under the Department of Interior, and that can be used, sadly, to allow this mining company, this foreign mining company, to come in and destroy that whole area of Oak Flat. And yet our response has been to use the settler colonial courts. And unfortunately, if we know the history with these settler colonial court systems, we lose the majority of our court cases. And under this administration, I don't see it getting any better. I'd be extremely concerned about when we bring it forward. And the other thing I would say for our Mexican brothers and indigenous brothers and sisters that work in our fields and pick the fruit and work in these places and these restaurants across the country, is to don't show up to work, to hit the American population in the pocket, because they'll start to feel it. But sometimes I worry about these American citizens, because they are some of the most ignorant citizens in the world when it comes to developing and creating a better relationship with our friends and our allies and our workers and all people that call this place America home. And so America is unfortunately full of white settler colonial narratives that they have to dominate and that they have to be in control, and they'll bite off their nose despite their face, So I worry about how they are. I don't think that I think America has a long ways to go for healing and reconciliation and recognition of indigenous peoples and people that come here. And these narratives that are being pushed by this Trump administration are based on Project 2025, and it's based on the white settler patriarchy narrative. So, I worry about our community. So
yes, and much for our listeners and our friends and allies to be concerned about and continue the fight to resist. And I wanted to ask you also, Shannon, because you and your peoples are along the southern border there, and we've seen over the years a continuous, steady militarization of the border, and with ICE there, the MIGRA patrolling. Now the president is sending soldiers down there along the border. We have Israeli surveillance systems along Tohono O'odham territory and along the border. If people can only see, this buildup that is occurring, and now with Mexico, the new president of Mexico, is sending 10,000 soldiers up to the border. To secure the border under the fentanyl drugs and the cartels and all that. But this is developing into a wider, a broader issue of a buffer zone. What can you shed light on this militarization that continues?
So there's been little word coming from the tribes that are along the area. I mean, of course there's a concern with the ongoing people crossing through the Tohono O'odham territory, and I can't speak for Tohono O'odham, but we do know that there are still people that are trekking across the desert in some of the most difficult circumstances. Whether unfortunately, it can be really hot there, it can be really cold in the desert, but they're still coming. And some of our community members, some of our indigenous relatives down south don't hear the news that we get. You and I are inundated with Facebook and Instagram and media throughout the day, and some of our brothers and sisters don't have access to that, and they continue to come. And they're not criminals and they're not rapists. They're looking for, because what the United States has done and other settler governments have done is destroyed their systems of an economy in their regions and in their territories. We know the from what happened with in 1992 and 94 with the Chiapas, and so it's an ongoing project, the settler colonialism that destroys these economies and livelihoods of our indigenous peoples of the South, and primarily it's those relatives that are seeking a better life, and they're coming for protection. They're coming because their economies have been destroyed. They're coming because many drug cartels or illegal crime waves are coming through their communities and taking over. But I worry that this ongoing again, this encroachment and this violation of indigenous sovereignty, of native sovereignty with regards to their land and their territory. What are the native people going to do? What are the Tohono O'odham going to do? What are the Kumeyaay going to do? What are the Kokopah going to do? What are the Apache going to do? The Lapon Apache. So, and all the other, I think there's 18 nations along the border. What are they going to do with this military might that comes through and basically displaces and controls and imposes their surveillance upon your territory and your citizens? The tribes must band together and still fight for their dignity and their sovereignty, and to challenge the U.S. government's role and the Mexican government's role on indigenous peoples, both north and south of this man-made border. So, yeah.
Thank you, Shannon, for those insights, for that insight in particular. And also along the border, I mean, there's been a lot of people, tribal members in the past who have helped those that are crossing, looking for a dignified, living, and to come across having this government here having invaded much of their countries where they come from as well, and taken the resources and people on this side of the border and your people and others who have been helping, taking water out there in the desert, have been penalized, So we'll see, how that, how that continues to flow. And Shannon, and because you work with incarcerated Native Americans and men and women in the Southwest and particularly in California for now as well, our good friend and our brother, Elder Leonard Peltier, has received clemency by former President Joe Biden. What can you tell us about that in his release come February the 18th?
Well, he scheduled when I heard the news that morning, I reached out to his family and asked if this was true, because I woke up and my phone was blowing up, and just like everybody else, and people were talking about his clemency. I was excited. I mean, I'm overjoyed, that he can be released even sooner. But it's, the Department of, it's up to the Board of Parole they can let him out. I mean, he's got this pardon, they can let him out sooner. But from my understanding is people are preparing for his release on the 18th, that he's gonna, I don't know if he's gonna visit a medical facility first, and then just to check on him. Who knows? He might just want to just go directly to his home. I would just encourage people to give him space, give him time, to let him get settled in, and be mindful that he still can be violated in violation of his parole or his, because he's literally on house arrest. What does it mean? I don't know the intricacies of his pardon, but it's not a full pardon. So does that mean then that brothers and sisters who are formerly incarcerated, who are on parole, cannot visit him? I would imagine so. Let's be mindful of that we're not sending our brother Leonard Peltier back to prison. We're very cognizant of not only his health but his conditions of his house confinement. So I'm really excited. I want to go see him, but we'll wait on February 22nd in Arizona. We're having a small gathering of Native people to celebrate his coming home. He should be coming home the 18th. On the 22nd, Saturday the 22nd February, we're going to be in Arizona on the Onkakamurta Reservation, Salt River Reservation, and we'll be having a small gathering, bring some food. We're going to have some dancing and some singing. We're going to have some speakers just talking about their feelings and their emotions about this great day that Leonard Peltier gets to come home, gets to be with his family, gets to be with his grandchildren, gets to be with all of us. And I'm just so happy that he's home. I've known of Leonard Peltier all my life, and just excited to know that he'll be home. So.
No, I want to thank you very much, Shannon Rivers, for your input, update, and all-around view of how we perceive the current administration coming down in Indian country. But we've weathered all these 46, 47 presidents all through the ages, and this is just another one. But our sovereignty and as a people is ever more important that we stay together and struggle together every day. And hopefully, the American Indian movement that Leonard Peltier is very much a part of will have its what is it? Its reunion on February 27th. So
That's right.
that's a big call of celebration, and we have our own "No One Left Behind" in the case like Leonard Peltier. So we look forward to that, and hopefully you'll have a good meeting there at Salt River Reservation on the 22nd to acknowledge the freedom of Leonard Peltier. And people, they'll probably be setting up Facebook. There'll be people there maybe to greet him when he comes out on the 18th, or if not sooner, that could happen, as you say, or it could be delayed on a violation that they might conjure up, as you say, as well.
Yep.
The federal FBI and others have expressed their dislike of the clemency that Biden put out at the very last minute, which he rightfully, strategically did in his last minutes. Lest we forget how during Clinton's administration, when he announced a week before his leaving office that Leonard's case was on his desk, and lo and behold, a day or two later, the FBI circled the White House and discouraged him from even moving on that. So, we'll pray hard and look forward to hearing good news. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
All
shout
right.
out to our border angels who are working to drop water for our relatives along the Tohono border in Arizona and New Mexico and California. They're doing a lot of great work, and we hope that they continue to do that, and we hope that we get a handle on all these things that we talked about. So thank you, Tony. Thank you for your time. Thank you. Appreciate you inviting me on.
All right. Thank you very much, Shannon Rivers.
All right. Thank you, Tony.
I want to thank Shannon Rivers for that interview, and Shannon from the great Gila River Reservation of the Great Tohono Nation, my relatives. He has much words for us to ponder and to think about the threat of the new Department of the Interior, represented the Secretary there of Interior, Doug Burgum, my relatives. And so we're getting close to the hour here.
Remember Alcatraz and Wounded Knee, Indian People's Movement, making history. Trail of broken trees, raise the cry. 1,000 government promises and everyone a lie. Why? Telling you why. We got the free Peltier. 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 Ain't no doubt about it. We got a free land of Peltier. Free land of Peltier. Yes! Federal agents gunning for Peltier. Leonard was a leader the government did fear. Took him to the courthouse to be tried. This was the same government committed genocide. Why? Telling you why. We got the free Peltier. 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 Ain't no doubt about it. We got a free land of Peltier. Free land of Peltier. Yeah. More than 40 years have come and gone. People the world over shouting out to right is wrong. Now it's time for justice to be done. And to fight for Leonard's freedom is to fight for everyone. Why? Telling you why. We got free Peltier. Free Peltier. Free Peltier. Free Peltier. Free Peltier. Ain't no doubt about it. We got a free Leonard Peltier. Free Leonard Peltier. Free Leonard Peltier. Free Leonard Peltier.
I want to give a quick announcements, if I may. As I said, Wounded Knee on the 27th. Mark your calendar and try to get out there. There'll be more information as time goes on here, my relatives. On March 9th, we're already moving into March. We just got into February. But major rallies across the country, my relatives, for immigration rights and for immigration reform. And this immigration reform has not gone into serious discussion since the act itself went into operation 1924. So look out for this big rally. Be a part of it. Join an alliance with all people of color and immigrants and workers on that day. As you might recall, 1986, President Ronald Reagan had gave amnesty to over 3 million people that undocumented and had been in the country for a while. So it can be done again, my relative. It needs to be done again. A major sweeping immigration reform to be had. And let's not forget that President Obama had deported over 3 million during his administration, my relatives. And so let's not forget that. It's quite a number. And yes, indeed, the Senate Bill 2606 is still alive. I believe it's in the Judiciary Committee, but this is on the immigration provisions that are needed. There's also HR or House of Representatives Bill 1511. That's still in the works, my relatives. I don't know how far either bill will get, but still they're alive and well. And this is the registry date for people that have been in the country here since before 1972 to apply for legal status. So let's keep that in mind, my relatives. Another item here for March, keep in mind Mexica New Year is coming up. That's March 11. And in San Francisco, there'll be a gathering there in front of San Francisco City College on Valencia Street in the Mission District from 6 p.m. until 1 a.m., my relatives. So be ready for that celebration, Mexica New Year. Also, don't forget, my relatives, to see Eagle and Condor TV show Sundays at 4 o'clock. I am the host. I am your host. I've been there for years. If you haven't gone to see that program, tune in at sfc.tv or live streaming at aim-west.org. That's aim-west.org for live streaming at Sundays, 4 p.m. And I'll be in Panama, my relatives, with the Kuna Nation from February the 17th to the 28th to celebrate their 100-year anniversary of their receiving their demarcated region there on the eastern coast of Panama, Cunayala. So I'll be reporting to you perhaps Wednesday, March the 5th, and tell you all about it.
I said, lucha por la migra, te chuteas y le corres now. Hacer migra, te chuteas y le corres now. Antes que te agarren, ponle con ganas now. Que migra, te chuteas y le corren now. No te agüites, raza, ponle con ganas now. Ponte tus shiny calcos pa' camellar con los barcos, para escapar potatoes, para piscar choneros, hacer migra, te chuteas y le corren now.
That's it, my relatives. This is Tony Gonzales, and you've been listening to Bay Native Circle. Our producers, Janeen Antoine. Opening music was Al Frank Manriquez, mixed with Rosca D, Robert Maribel, and Rare Tribal Mob. Thank yous go out to Falcon Molina for helping engineer, Diane Williams for opening prayer. We also thank our musical artists, our guests, and you, our listening audience, for your continued support and having supported Leonard Peltier all along. We want to give a shout out to our brothers and sisters on the inside, especially those on death row. Thank you to Creator, to Indigenous peoples whose lands we occupy, to ancestors, and to those yet to come. Blessings.
No ki ma wish ku ma wish. No ki ma wish ku ma
Uncle Chewy, do you even know what the cloud is?
Of course. It's where you keep pictures of cats and your taxes.
That's not... Okay, what about algorithms?
Are those the fancy moves the kids are doing on TikTok?
Wow, we are so doomed.
Hold on now. We don't need any of that stuff because we've got KPFA.
KPFA?
Yup. It's on the radio. You just turn the dial and boom. Real news, real music, real conversations. No downloads, no passwords, and no spinning wheels.
Even you can handle that.
Exactly. KPFA, where simplicity meets brilliance.
And it's listener supported, so it's all about community.
KPFA 94.1 FM. No cloud, no algorithms, just great radio.
Let us see.
It happens all the time like this. That one person will be right there. And she was just crying. All right, we were getting ready to sing. All right, I hadn't even got the words out. She was already in it. And her eye, she was not too far away, but I just had to tell her to come here. And I held her hand and sang. And I said, see, I had a bad day. I've been performing and I got it all out. And I forget what I do. See, you better remember, This is why you're doing it. You belong here to do this. This is your calling, is to ignite something in people, to let them know that they belong too. It's bigger than me. It always has been bigger than me.
KPFA, storytelling for social change.
This is KPFA, KPFB in Berkeley and 88.1 KFCF in Fresno.